You know shit about boxing.
Hi there, I'm Danny Flex and welcome to episode 20, can you believe 20 already, of You Don't Know Shit About Boxing, a podcast brought to you by the team behind Seconds Out. And as always, I am joined by my festive co-host on this. Well, it's nearly Christmas, isn't it?
I was going to say, what about me is festive today?
Miss Georgia Banks.
Hello. It's nice to be back. I can't believe it's the last one of the year.
I know. I can't believe we've done 20.
I had to say, like, it is the last one of the year. You're not going to bring me back next week.
Yeah, no, we're going to bring you on New Year's Eve. Yeah.
I'm working.
Don't make plans. Oh, you're working?
Yeah.
On New Year's Eve?
And New Year's Day. I've got 2 days off over Christmas.
See, this is why I don't like Sky. No, I'm joking.
Don't get me sacked.
Yeah, we won't get sponsorship either. So this week we're going to be reviewing 2022 as it's almost in the rearview mirror. As I'm talking to you now, I don't know the result, but I believe Naoya Inoue was well on his way to becoming boxing's latest undisputed champion. So we might talk about that a little bit, but we'll mainly be talking about the best fights and fighters of 2022. And joining us to do that is this week's very special guest. He's originally from Wiltshire, now based in Brixton. He is the head of boxing for 258 management, and I'm reliably informed that he is a dead ringer for Justin Timberlake. Will he bring sexy back, or will he be quick to walk away? See what I did there? Please welcome Will Harvey.
Hey.
Woo! Harvey.
That was amazing, Danny. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Beautiful.
Didn't practice it. One take. Yeah. But you've never heard the Timberlake thing before?
No, mate. That's all the comments are. Just freaking Timberlake. Yeah.
The first couple of interviews we did, no one said it, and I thought maybe it's just me. Then I thought it was really glaring, and, and then from the last two,
When you go out, do you get it?
I do. My friends think that I'm making it up when I say it. Do you know what? It's mainly in America that I got it originally. People actually came up and asked me for photos and stuff, which was
do you
very
play along
strange.
with it? I would.
No, I didn't. To be fair,
you did the accent.
No, I won't even try it. But I tell them, but then they still wanted a picture anyway, just because they couldn't believe that I looked so much like, and I wasn't. Anyway, I'll take it. It's not a bad thing.
It makes me feel we should change the topic, but so yeah, we're going to be reviewing 2022. But I think before we get into all that, it'd be good to get a bit about your background, aside from where you're from and stuff, which I did in my incredibly polished intro.
Thank you for that.
But yeah, just tell us your background in boxing and how you came to be in your current role.
So I've been in the sport now, coming up 6.5, nearly 7 years. I joined what is now 258, but that was then AJ Boxing in 2016. And it was, to be honest, it was the first job that I had coming out of uni. I mean, I've been watching the sport for, since the first fighter that really got me hooked on the sport was Ricky Hatton. I think the Costa Zoo fight was the first fight I ever really kind of took notice of and watched. And then the subsequent Floyd fights and Manny fights was what kind of got me hooked. So I've been following it avidly for a long time, but then came out of university in end of 2015, 2016, was looking for a job. My brother was actually represents footballers, so he's a football agent, and I managed to find Freddie's, who is AJ's manager and the MD of 258. I found his email address, and basically I was emailing him to really try and get because I had no idea about how to go about getting into boxing. That it's not a conventional career path for a lot of people, so I didn't really know how I was supposed to kind of get into it. But I got this guy's email, just right, well, this is someone that can definitely help me. So I was emailing him to really try and just which I'm sure you guys have probably done, or how people come to you say, can I have a coffee? Just to get some advice on how to get into the industry, what I should be doing, who I should be speaking to. And I thought, best case scenario, then I'll probably get maybe some work experience. He would let me shadow him for a week or whatever. And this was, so AJ had just beaten, he'd won the world title against Martin earlier in the year, and he'd just beaten Brazil. And so it was really kind of starting to take off. So Freddie didn't really reply to me for about 2 or 3 months, which I kind of was semi-expecting. But I just thought to myself, if you just keep emailing him, and he'll either come back and say yes or no, but at least you'll get
leave me alone and go.
Or leave it. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was expecting, him to come back and say, look, just stop emailing me, basically. So I thought, until I get a reply, I'll just keep emailing him. So then I did that for a couple of months, and then eventually he came back and he was like, I'm actually looking to take somebody on, because the workload around AJ had suddenly multiplied massively since the world title win. So he needed somebody to really just kind of be an assistant to him. So he asked me to send my CV. I did an interview with Freddie, did an interview with Andy Bell, who's AJ's publicist, and I did an interview with AJ's uncle, who kind of very early on in his career was kind of mentoring him and stuff. And they just liked me. We got on well. I told them what my ambition and stuff was. So I then joined them basically just to be Freddie's runaround boy and do whatever the kind of menial tasks were that he needed me to do, which I did for 6 to 8 months probably, learning all the time underneath him. And then going into 2017, that was just after the Rio Olympic cycle. So I explained to the guys that my ambition was to start representing my own fighters, and I wanted to build try and build a management company. And that's something that AJ wanted to do as well, very much so. He felt strongly about bringing some fighters under his wing so he can help manage their affairs, promote them as best that he could, and provide the best opportunities for them and ensure that they're getting the best deals wherever they're going. So March 2017, roughly there or thereabouts, the first 2 fighters that we signed. Also, Lawrence Okolie was the first fighter we signed, who I started looking after. And then we signed Josh Boatsi a couple of months after that. Josh was a bit later because he was a lot more Josh was a lot more of a slower burn than Lawrence. He took his time with everything, so that was took a bit longer. But those are the first 2 guys we signed in 2017. And then we kind of went through a bit of a rebrand, so left AJ Boxing, tried to make it its own entity outside of Anthony, and that's where 258 came from. And then from there till the present day, we've just been, building the stable with fighters that we think have got a good potential to be world champions, to be quite well known and successful outside of the ring as well. And so I've been building that for. What's that now? 5-6 years later, we've got 10, 11 fighters on our books, and just continue to grow it, with the right talent, and just trying to maximize everything that they do and get them to the top of the sport, which, we've done. Lawrence became a world champion, which was great. I think Boatsi is going to be next in line, very much so. Sully Sissoko, our French fighter, is knocking on the door. And then we've got the next generation coming through in Fraser Clark, Ben Whittaker, who I think will replicate a lot of the stuff that the guys have done kind of in the first cycle that we had. So yeah, that was it in a nutshell.
We're going to be going through some of those fighters and the 2022 they've had in a minute, but you mentioned Okolie a couple of times there. He's no longer with 258. You guys parted ways amicably, I believe, in the summer. Yeah. Is there much you can say about the recent issues between him and Matchroom? I know there was some stuff broke on social media yesterday.
Yeah. We're on very good terms with Lawrence. Like I said, he was the first guy that I managed, and he will always hold a very special place in my heart. And I understand the reasons why he wanted to go. He's relocated himself out to Dubai. He's got a team around him there that he wants to work with, that he's known for a long time, a lot longer than he's known us. So we fully respected that decision. So we parted ways on good terms. We were not, once he left us, we then didn't have visibility on the stuff that was going back and forth with Matchroom. And I don't want to, get involved in other people's business, but what I saw last night was that there seems to be an agreement now that the contract has expired and he is a free agent and he's free to go and talk to whoever he wants. It all kind of stemmed from this, is there one more fight on the contract or not, which was originally around the Glowacki incident when that fight first fell through. And the only thing that I can say on it, in support of what Lawrence is saying, because this was the argument that we were building because right up until he left us just as we were starting to have kind of build this, well, for want of a better phrase, argument against Matchroom as to why there wasn't another fight on the contract. But that fight, it was Jazuski who stepped in place of Glowacki, which they claimed was another fight. But Lawrence, who is the owner of his own image rights company, which is contracted with Matchroom, and we never signed any legal document, any contract that said, yes, this fight is going to take place outside of the original agreement that we've got. And that was always our argument. But then he left us. He had his team in Dubai going through it all. And I've said this to you on a number of occasions, Danny, for how frustrating I found it because, and I said to you last time, it's going to get resolved eventually, and it has now been resolved, which is great, and he can get back to his career, which is the most important thing. I felt like, that whole situation probably could have been avoided because when right in the middle of them going through this back and forth, we were trying to get him to fight on the AJ undercard in Saudi. And if they were saying you've got one fight left, in my opinion, what I was saying to Lawrence before he left us was just do the fight in Saudi, which is your last fight. You get paid a shed load of money on a big card, and then you can go to market anyway at the end of the year. Had he done that, he could have had the fight in August. He could have maybe had a new deal and been fighting again in December. As it turns out, he didn't. He had to back himself and go through that process, which he's done. So I'm just delighted now that it seems to be over, and he can just push on with his career and get back to fighting. Because I honestly, I know he gets criticised sometimes for performances and stuff, but I think he is easily the best cruiserweight in the world. He should be unified champion, and he should move up to heavyweight, and he should do the same at heavyweight. I think there's a lot of potential with him, so I'm delighted that he's going to be, he's getting back to his career now.
Presumably, going into the market and being a free agent was something you guys were behind up until the split.
Yeah.
What was the reason for that? Why were you guys advising him to do that rather than re-up with Matchroom?
It's not that we didn't want him to re-sign with Matchroom. It's, Matchroom are a world-class promoter. They pay good money. They pay on time, which you can't say for everybody in this sport. Like, they're a very reliable and trustworthy company to work with. So that we weren't pushing him to leave, but our job is to represent our fighters' best interests. If you're a free agent, I think it is within your best interest to go to market and see where your value is, see what everybody's saying. If you're going to go and buy a car, you don't go into a dealership and buy the first one that you look at. You go and test drive a few, you go and look at the different prices, etc. You've got to assess all of your options. It's within a fighter's interest to look at all the options are on the table for them when they have the opportunity to. So when we believed that Lawrence was out of contract, we wanted to go, quite honestly, and get other offers, because when it comes to negotiations, it's all about creating leverage, So we want to see what the various third parties, how they value him, how badly they want him, and Matchroom would always have an opportunity to match the offer, which is a pretty standard contractual thing.
First and last.
Exactly, yeah. So it was never we're trying to force a move away from Matchroom. It was just, you're a free agent, go to market and see what is the best move for you, what's the best value offer for you. And he's entitled to do that, as a fighter. So yeah, that's all it was. It was never trying to force a move away from Matchroom for the sake of it.
Let's focus now on the fighters that are under the 258 banner. Just before we go into specific examples, how would you assess 2022 for the company as a whole?
Up and down, I would say. Up and down. I mean, the positives are, I think, there's been Fraser Clark's made a fantastic start to his professional career, which I'm really happy about. Ben Whittaker, although he's had a injury towards the back end of this year, which has been frustrating. I thought he announced himself on the professional scene like spectacularly. I've never really seen a debut like that. I think the signings of those two guys for us and the way in which they've started is a massive positive. We've done great work with international fighters. Anthony Herrera, who's a Mexican American, has boxed 3 or 4 times on great big shows in America. Suleiman Sissoko has we've got him boxing in America at the start of the year. We've now got him boxing this Saturday for the WBC silver title at welterweight. So he's going to be put in a position for a world title very soon. So Shannon Ryan, again, working at Sky, has really impressed, I think. So
yeah, she is my favorite.
Yeah, she's done really well, and the thing about Shannon is that she's got that blueprint that I was talking about earlier. Of she works really hard in the ring and performs, but she's also got the kind of X factor outside of the ring.
Definitely.
She's very good with the PR and the commercial stuff. So, so I think working for us on a personal note, I think the way in which our new fighters have announced themselves, I think the breadth of work we've done with different promoters and different broadcasters, I'm very happy with. So those are all really positive steps for our company. Downsides, the Josh Barratzi-Bivol situation was incredibly frustrating. I'm not going to lie to you. Like that was something that we were really excited about. He was mentally preparing himself for, and then it got pulled from underneath us. The Pascal situation again was very annoying for him. So towards the back end of this year for Josh, we've had quite a lot of frustrating things go on, which is probably a downside. Obviously, the Usyk result in Saudi was disappointing. So but this is boxing, isn't it? You're never ever going to have it plain sailing. It's just a series of peaks and troughs. That's what I've learned over the last 6 or 7 years. You just got to be able to take the rough with the smooth.
Let's focus on a few that you haven't mentioned there. Campbell Hatton being first. He's had a year of progression, it seems. All the talk of him being Ricky's son, getting promoted to levels that, maybe he didn't quite deserve early in his career. That seems to have fallen by the wayside now. People seem to be getting behind him, and there seems to be clear improvement.
I hope so, yeah. And there is improvement, but Campbell cannot and will not be rushed. I still think like we haven't necessarily moved him up the levels yet, because I just still think there's a lot of development and experience he needs to get within the professional ring. Don't forget, he turned over during lockdown, just after the first lockdown. He had 15, 16 amateur fights, and he's 21, 22. So he is an absolute he's possibly more of a novice than Conor Benn was when Conor Benn first turned over, in my opinion. So he needs to move so slowly. I think the last couple of performances have been really good. He got a good stoppage with a lovely body shot, which was very like reminiscent of which is very reminiscent of his dad. So you're right. There are positives. There are steps in the right direction for Campbell, but we just need to make sure that he is not rushed unnecessarily, because promoters nowadays tend to, the culture is changing with the promoters, where they're less and less willing to give you kind of easy fights. They just want close 50-50 fights.
Is that because there's more competition?
Yeah, I think so, and I think the fans kind of demand it. I also slightly feel that it's part of the UFC effect. Like the way that the UFC operate is like you'll get chucked into a life and death. Like is take it or leave it. Yeah. So and for the fans, it's great because the product is then amazing. Yeah. So I understand it from a promoter's standpoint why they want to do that. And like you say, there's so much competition in the market now, which is great. But at the same time, they need to then cut through, and the criticism on a bad show is that much more. And so there is always a pressure, even with people like Campbell, that they want to put him into hard fights now, but that's our job to try and manage that situation so that he's not put in a situation where he can come unstuck unnecessarily. And I have to say, if we're being completely self-reflective, we probably didn't do a good enough job when we put him on the AJ Usyk 1 card at Tottenham Stadium, because that was an opponent that I didn't. The opponent wasn't. I don't think the opponent was out of Campbell's league, but the stage in which he was put that early on in his career, he boxed, he was third from last. He boxed in probably in front of 50,000 people. And I think with the name that is on you already, and then suddenly an arena like that, you're thinking, bloody hell, like there's a lot of pressure. And I think, we have to take responsibility and say that we probably put too much on him too soon in that regard. Which is why, again, this year we need to make sure that we just move him at a slow and steady pace and don't be rushed. But he's been developing very well.
It's good that you can say that and admit that, because I find in a lot of promoters, and to say people like Campbell, Ben Whittaker, AJ was one, I kind of feel like promoters and businesses have built fighters up to be untouchable, and then when they're found out that they're not untouchable, it's kind of the other end of the spectrum, because we've never seen it. Like when we saw AJ can't get my words out, take his first loss, it was kind of something that none of us expected. It was kind of a bit unseen, and I feel like it's good that you're taking Campbell slow, because he was just getting so much hate and so much shit on the internet.
And particularly after,
he's a young lad.
Yeah, exactly. And after that show at Tottenham was the worst I've ever seen it. He came off social media for a few months after that, because it was completely brutal. And like, this is what annoys me about the sport. This is slightly off topic, and I said this to Fraser after the Kamil Sokolowski fight. you just have to ignore anything that's said on social media because you will never win.
It's
you
so
will
hard
never
to,
win.
isn't it?
Like, because Fraser was knocking people over in a couple of rounds and it was like, you're undermatching him. He's
Yeah.
way better than this.
Yeah.
Stop fucking giving him easy fights. You get in the Sokolowski fight, he goes 6 good rounds, but he didn't stop him, and then suddenly he's shit. And he's like, oh, he's a hype job. Sorry, can I swear? Sorry.
Yeah.
It's too late now.
Yeah.
Sorry, I said it's
fine.
These American hip hop stars.
But yeah, and then so you don't stop, and then you're crap. So you just have to ignore it. It's easier said than done, but you have to really try and ignore it. And yeah, Campbell got a lot of that after the Tottenham fight, which is why we have to, hold our hands up and be accountable to ourselves and say that wasn't Campbell's choice. We put him on that card and we gave him that slot. And that was probably too much too soon from us. And so we take responsibility really more than Campbell for that situation. But it's always a fighter that was the one that gets criticised, isn't it? So
I think as well, people just need to remember that he's not his dad.
Yeah.
He's not going to be his dad. He's a completely different person.
absolutely.
It's a tricky one though, isn't it? Because how much of his dad and the legend and everything is used to promote Campbell as well. Because there is, you'd be mad not to use that, similar to Nigel Benn and Conor Benn.
Yep.
So it is, how much of it's pressure and how much of it is opening doors for him. It's tough,
Yeah.
isn't it?
But I kind of think, from my point of view, working in that world, I know what we do to build up fighters online, and I don't like a lot of it. So on fight week, I tend to normally things that go outside like main events, so like Crush Shields, Savannah Marshall fight week. It was all about them and like Alicia Baumgartner and Michaela Mayer. But I was pushing other people up like Georgia O'Connor, Shannon Ryan, because you don't always want to see your top cards. It's like at the minute we're pushing Chris Eubank, Chris Eubank Jr.
Liam
and
Smith.
Liam Smith, and it's a really good card. I made a load of Dan Aziz graphics because why are we still not talking about Dan Aziz?
But you also like that Aziz.
We love Dan Aziz over here, but we should be talking about him more. Do you know what I mean? But so when you're constantly building up the bigger people, the harder they fall. I mean,
Dan Aziz does have a standing invite to come on this podcast.
yeah, I'm still annoyed with him about that.
He insists he's coming on.
Was he supposed to be here today?
No,
A
not
couple of
today.
weeks ago, actually.
There's been 2
Yeah.
occasions, I think, now. But he
He's a
insists
very
he wants
busy
to
man.
come on. But yeah, he's very busy. And he's preparing for a British title defence,
Yes.
Commonwealth
Yeah.
title fight at the moment. So
Yeah. In Bournemouth, right? Is he fighting
Yeah.
in Bournemouth?
yeah, against Rocky Fielding.
Yeah.
It's a good fight, actually. But yeah, I want to talk about Derek Chisora. I want to get George's take first, and then we'll come to you, Will, if that's all right. Yeah, put you on the spot a little bit. Kind of uncomfortable viewing at times, in my view, against Fury, although most people kind of expected it to be, I suppose. But what did you make of the fight, and what should he do now before we go to the man who can actually advise him what to do now?
My thoughts still haven't changed since last time. I think he's at the stage in his career where he's going to be in these fights because sometimes who else are they going to go through? I mean, but he's also at the age and at the stage of his career where he needs to be getting fights to provide for his family, to secure his future, and I understand that aspect of him. He's never in a boring fight. Is it uncomfortable to watch? Yes. Do I like him being battered about? No. Do I want to see him fight again? No. Will I watch him again? Yeah. It's like, it's difficult, isn't it?
So, Will,
What are my opinions on it?
yeah, what
tell
are
us all the
you
secrets.
advising him to do at the moment,
Yeah.
I guess is the question.
So okay, the first thing that I will say is that yes, we manage, we represent Derek's interests, but when it comes to retiring, I don't think there is anybody that can say or force a fighter to retire. It's entirely the fighter's own decision, and whatever Derek wants to do going forward, we will have to respect it. So I would never say to Derek, well, I would, but like I could never decide for Derek and force him to retire. It's entirely his decision, and we have to respect that it's his decision. Having said that, my personal opinion, I wanted Derek to retire 2 fights ago.
Yeah.
I felt like
I think we
he's
all
made
did.
a load of money already. He's secured his legacy. He's a legend of the sport. He's got a beautiful young family. Why? In my head, I'm like, why do you need to keep doing this? You can walk away now with your faculties intact and go and live the rest of your life that you've worked so hard to achieve. And I wanted that to happen a couple of fights ago. Now, it's all well and good saying that. I think the reality is it is so hard for these fighters who have done nothing else but this sport and training for the last 10, 15, 20, however many years, to actually walk away from the limelight, from the attention, from the adrenaline rush of sparring, training camps, the build up, the actual fight itself. It is so hard to walk away from that. And when they do, we've seen it with Kell Brook's interview recently. I don't know if you've seen that. It's like a part of them dies. And it's actually a really scary time for professional fighters immediately after they retire, because they're suddenly left with a void of time and they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing with themselves. So that's our job, to make sure that when the fighters do walk away, there's a plan in place for them post-career to keep them busy, whether it's doing a podcast, doing a book, doing broadcasting, keeping themselves active, so they've got a bit of structure to their lives. And that's a massively important part of our job post the fighter's career. Now, the Fury fight, I found it uncomfortable to watch as well. I thought it should have been, I would like to have seen him pulled out a couple of rounds before he was. I really didn't enjoy watching it. And, you know, I always felt like, you know, Dell's gone, he's taken a lot of the top fighters all the way in recent times. So, you know, we were speaking beforehand, and I'm trying to kind of, you know, present a way in which I can see Derek winning, but I was always fearful that the fight would go the way that it did. Now, I understand why Derek took that fight, because yes, he's made a lot of money, but, you know, that fight he was going to make more than he'd ever made in his career.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's a shot at the world title, and it's Tyson Fury, and it's Tottenham in front of 60,000. Like, what an unbelievable way that is to go out, if that is going to be the last time that he fights. So I was fearful of that fight. It made me feel uncomfortable. I was like, I was nervous going into it, I'm not going to lie, but I understood the reasons why he wanted to take it. So if he wanted to take it, we had to make it happen for him, and that's what we did. But in my humble opinion, I would like to see him walk away from the sport now. I don't think there's anything left that he needs to prove. I think he's earned a lot of money, and like I said, he is a legend of the sport. Problem is, he's a huge ticket seller, so there's always going to be fights out there for him, you know. And the only way in which I could probably see myself getting on board with one more fight for him is that if he wanted to do something similar to Anthony Crolla, where you have essentially an exhibition, you get an absolute plumber in to just turn up and fall over, but he gets his moment in front of the British fans to say goodbye, but it's a very, very easy fight. If he wanted to do that, I could probably see myself supporting that, because that's his way of saying goodbye to the fans who he's had a really close bond with, particularly in the latter half of his career. But if it's a situation of he wants to go and fight Wilder, there's not a way in which I would want to be involved with that process. I think that would be a horrible thing to happen. Like I said, it's Derek's decision, and he doesn't like people telling him what to do, and this has always been a bit of a touchy subject for us to speak about. But I have to be honest and say I don't want that to happen. I would like him to retire now in an ideal world.
Yeah, it must be difficult when you've got such a close personal relationship as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like Danny turning up with his black eye.
Yeah.
It's awkward, but at least no one's mentioned it, so it's fine. I feel sorry for plumbers as well. They've become like synonymous with shit boxers. Why not carpenters or electricians?
Cab drivers, whatever you want to
I think
say.
Didn't Fury call David Price a plumber, or Tony Bellew, or both of them?
Yeah.
I mean, he calls a lot of people a lot of different
things.
things.
Very good point, yeah. We will be talking about AJ, as I'm sure you would expect, and his 2022, and maybe his 2023 as well. But before we do that, Josh Green is going to be listing his top 3 UK fighters for the year that's just about to finish over in the green room.
Thank you very much, guys, and welcome back to the green room, the final green room of 2022. And I'm here today to run through 3 of the boxers that have had a fantastic year. My top 3 from the last 12 months, and the first of them being Tyson Fury. Now, on the cover, the fights he's had haven't been the biggest he's had in his career, but coming back to the UK and having that huge homecoming against Dillian Whyte at Wembley, filling out Wembley against Dillian Whyte was a huge deal, really, in the boxing world. Now, Whyte came in, he's a very live contender, knockout artist, and he definitely got the power to beat some of the best in the world, but it took Fury just 6 rounds to dispatch of Whyte and just up his reputation and everything in the process back in the UK, of course. We saw him a couple of weeks ago as well against Derek Chisora. Wasn't the fight that everybody wanted, but he was a credible contender, you have to say, Chisora, and 60,000 people inside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on a cold Saturday night. Terrific achievement, not just by Fury, of course, but by BT in Queensbury as well, to get 60,000 on a cold winter's night. Next up, we'll look at Sonny Edwards, somebody who's really rising in terms of his popularity in British boxing. He's been a world champion for a while now, but in terms of seeing him on TV, you know, he's obviously with Pro Bellum, he doesn't really get the exposure that maybe you would say he deserves. So he's gone all this way without being on a BT Sport or a Sky Sports or on DAZN. And the big fights are really next year for him. Julio Cesar Martinez or Bam Rodriguez, of course. And if he was to get those fights, they would be really big deals. We saw him this year, earlier in the year, over in the Middle East, and then later in October time back in Sheffield, his hometown, attracting a big crowd over there. I think he's got a lot of pull and people are interested to see his progression. Still just 26 years of age, and those big fights are still ahead of him. Hopefully we'll see at least one of them in 2023. And finally, we've got to look at Natasha Jonas. What a year she has had. 3 fights in 2023. The first being that long-awaited world title tilt and collecting her first world title belt. She's waited an awful long time for this. She's been the B-side against the likes of Terry Harper and Katie Taylor, of course, many others as well. But to get that victory over Chris Namus up in Manchester, wow, what an unbelievable feeling that must have been for her. Not just collecting the belt, but coming up so many weights to achieve what she did. She's obviously defended that belt and won 2 more since then, the most recent against Eva Marie de Kerr up in the Northwest again. So ending the year 2023 with 3 belts around her waist, and I think most people would say one of the most deserving fighters on these shores. So they've been my top 3 fighters of the year 2022. I'm sure you've got your own opinions. Feel free to put them down in the comments below. Back to Danny and Georgia.
Cheers, Josh. Glad to see you finally got that haircut we've been talking about.
So every week, Josh gets bullied. Just by you. Not by
I don't
me,
think he
Josh.
watches the podcast, though, because he's never mentioned it.
No, maybe not.
Start watching the podcast, John. Well, he's not going to see it, is he? I don't think we could disagree too much with those top 3, although it kind of underlines the fact it hasn't been a stellar year, perhaps, for British boxing. In terms of the fighters, anyway, we've had some really good shows. Talk of Fury, obviously, inevitably leads to AJ. They're still intrinsically linked. Probably the worst year of AJ's career. I know it's not the nicest place to start talking to you.
God, what a lie.
Yeah. But I mean, he's never lost twice in a year before, has he? And Usyk's a great fighter, so there's no shame in it. But what's it been like for you guys and for AJ specifically, the kind of re-evaluation, I guess, this year?
I mean, it's a little bit of hitting the reset button, to be honest, because, you know, he lost the rematch. So in terms of world titles, immediate world titles and stuff, he's having to take a bit of a back seat in that regard. So, you know, he brought in, you know, an additional coach as well, and he found a new training space in Loughborough, etc. So there's been a lot of it's kind of hitting the reset button with him a little bit. A massively disappointing year, but I think going into next year, it's in a way slightly refreshing in a way, because and I know we've kind of talked about this before, but the way in which you saw him react in Saudi after the fight, I think was kind of indicative of the level of pressure and expectation that he'd been having to deal with for the last 4 or 5 years, ever since throughout his career really, but particularly since the kind of Klitschko fight. That level of scrutiny and expectation of the fans on him, it's a really heavy weight to bear. And I think when he lost that rematch and the belts had gone and he was no longer champion and he wasn't going to get another chance at them, certainly in the kind of near future, that armour just kind of cracked and came apart a little bit. And I think you saw a little bit of the toll that it had been taking on him mentally. So I'm delighted that this year he's not boxing, as in like towards the end of this year, because I know there was talk, you know, and people were trying to push us to get a fight out of him in December. When the Fury opportunity came around, it's, you know, it had to be explored because you don't know when that fight's going to come around. So we had to go through the process, but I always felt like that was never really a realistic option. And I'm glad that he's had the rest of this year off to just kind of take a bit of a step back. He still ticks over with training. He's in America at the moment, just going around, learning bits and pieces from different people. But the kind of the pressure has been taken off him a little bit. And I think with the next fight, he'll be out hopefully March, April time next year. It's going to be a good level opposition, but it's going to be a fight with which he's going to come back. And I just think that kind of level of pressure and scrutiny is not quite going to be on him in the same way. And I just think, I think it's refreshing, and I'm hoping that he can kind of, not that he ever fell out of love with the sport, but I hope he can come back really enthused and energetic and 100% hungry like he was at the start of his career when he was just becoming world champion. And we can see that old AJ that when people got in the ring with him, they had, you know, part of them had already been defeated. You know, they were terrified of what was coming back, and they were, you know, kind of automatically on the back foot. And I think maybe in recent times that's been a little bit lost. So like I said, disappointing year, but I think we can kind of hit the refresh button and come back next year with a bit more, you know, with him reinvigorated.
You mentioned him going around learning from different trainers. This is kind of his second American tour, if you like. The first one ended up with Robert Garcia coming over.
Yeah.
Have any decisions been made in terms of the training team going forward? What do you make of when you see him on social media mixing with, you know, Derek James, for example, and some of the other trainers?
Yeah.
Once again,
I encourage it. Like, I think it's like, you know, I think it's a great thing to do. To go out and learn different ideas, see how different people work. He spent some time with Virgil as well, which I was really happy about. So I don't think it's a bad thing at all. Like, I think it can only be a good thing that can enhance you. But, you know, what's happening going forward in terms of his training team hasn't been decided yet. We'll have those conversations towards the end of the year, and I will expect that there will be a firm decision made in early next year. Like I said, he'll fight March, April time. So I would imagine we'll make a final call on that, on if it's somebody else, if it's the team that he's got now. However it's going to be, I think we'll make a decision on it early next year. So as it stands, there hasn't been any, you know, official decision made.
Yeah, I mean, from what a lot of people are saying, a lot of it is just rumour that, and this was said the first time around as well, whoever AJ does take on will have to work with Angel Fernandez. I might expect you to confirm or deny that, but are they particularly close in your experience, AJ and Angel?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Angel's been with us now, well, since the second Ruiz fight was his first one, so 3 or 4 fights. Yeah, they are close. They've done great work with each other up in Loughborough. Angel is a great, like, he's a great trainer, but what he's really good at is drilling. I really think like he can bring, he's not so much like, it's different. Like, different coaches have different strengths and stuff. Like, for example, Virgil Hunter is a world-class coach, for sure. But the biggest strength about Virgil is the way in which he trains the fighter's mind. Mentally, he's one of the strongest coaches I've ever seen, the kind of headspace that he can get the fighter into. And, you know, you see that particularly in the corner work that he does as well. Very calm, very clear, concise instruction. So someone like Virgil, I think, gets a fighter in the right headspace to go into a fight. Angel, although yes, he can do that. Angel's strength is drilling the fundamentals, learning new things and developing new styles. So AJ's really enjoyed that work with him. They've worked very closely up in Loughborough, so they've spent a lot of time together over the last kind of 3 or 4 years. And Angel gives 110% of his time. There's not really, with trainers, sometimes you can, like, egos can really come into play, and like if other people, like if other coaches want to be brought in, or the fighter goes and just, you know, spends a couple of weeks with other trainers, then, you know, their head trainer can kind of start to feel a certain way about it and act up and start to become a bit difficult. But Angel's never been like that. You know, he's accepting and understanding of AJ going out, trying different things with new coaches, seeing what he can pick up, because that's the way that Angel does it as well. He was so delighted when Robert came into the camp, because he felt like he could learn so much from him. The first tour that we did, went to Canelo's gym. He just loved going around the gym, so he gets it. And I think that kind of lack of ego from Angel's side with AJ doing these things brings them even closer together, because he knows that AJ knows that, you know, this is not like Angel's not here for egotistical reasons. He wants what's best for AJ. He wants to help him in the way that's best. So I think that has meant that him and Angel have become very close over the past few years.
Now, I spoke to Otto Wallin not long ago, maybe a week ago. He clearly wants the AJ fight in the spring. Dillian Whyte is the one who's been rumoured a lot. That rematch will always sell, of course. Didn't look overly impressive in his last fight, but it was his first under a new trainer, Buddy McGirt. How do you go about choosing AJ's next opponent? What are you looking for? What boxes to tick?
It's very much a team discussion. You got to look at who's available, obviously, and AJ never wants to take easy fights, but we I have to think how to say this. we will take a lot of care of the next opponent that he fights, for sure, because he doesn't need a confidence boost. He does not need a confidence boost, but like I said, I want him to go in and put on a statement. Okay, in my opinion, the way in which I would like to see it play out, I watched Dillian's last fight. I didn't think he looked, that impressive, but I also just don't think that Dillian actually in his last few fights has looked that impressive. So, there was part of me that was thinking before, maybe have one more, and then you look to fight Dillian in the summer, for example, and then you see what's happening with Fury and Usyk towards the end of the year. But speaking openly, in my opinion, I feel like he's not quite the same fighter that he once was. That fight is a fight that always sells. So actually the timing for it for AJ, I think makes sense. I think AJ can go and do a job on him. So if it was completely down to me, I'd have him fight Dillian end of March, April, early next year. And then you look to go and take the winner of Fury Usyk for undisputed. And then what happens after that is entirely up to AJ. The Wilder fight is always going to be there, but I wouldn't, in my opinion, I wouldn't want him to go straight into the Wilder fight. I don't think, although he will take that fight with no problem. But once you fought Dillian once more, and then Fury or Usyk again, you've maybe got the Wilder fight. But after that, I mean, he's then fought everybody in his era then. But like I said, that's way down the line. But immediate terms, I'd like to see him fight Dillian next for sure. I think that does big numbers in the stadium. I think he can do a job and then stop him inside 5. And then you look to fight probably what will be Fury for undisputed end of next year.
Kind of preempts my next question: who was going to win out of Fury and Usyk if it happens? Do you expect it to happen next?
Yeah, I think it's. From what I know, it's pretty much nailed on to happen end of March, I think.
I'm gonna have such a good birthday month.
Yeah, as a fan, obviously it's gonna slightly break my heart to see the undisputed fought for without our guy involved.
Yeah,
but as a fan, that is I'm so excited to see that. I think the build up will be amazing. Obviously,
Middle East.
Yeah, I think so.
Going out there, Georgia.
Yeah. Oh. Are you paying?
It's birthday, isn't it? Yeah.
I did want to go away for my birthday.
I thought I'd just get you a gift voucher, to be honest. But not a flight to Saudi.
What I think happens, I can't see anything. I think it's a great fight, and Usyk is a great fighter. I can't see anything other than a Fury victory, personally. I just think it's such a cliche, but a good big and beats a good small. And the size, Fury's 6'9", Usyk 6'3", 4".
It's crazy. Isn't it?
Yeah. I just think the distance that Fury can create between him and Usyk. He's got huge levers. He's got great feet to maintain the distance. I just can't see anything than Fury probably just outboxing him over 12 rounds, in my opinion. A much harder fight for Fury, I think, is Joe Joyce. The juggernaut, who's physically, much closer to what Fury is, doesn't stop coming forward, and can, really try and do a good job of walking Fury down and putting him under pressure. I just can't see Usyk, despite how elusive and fucking fantastic movement. I don't see him getting near enough to Fury to causing him any serious problems. So, yeah, Fury Usyk. I think Fury comes out on top.
Well, that fight does appear to be next up, but just to confirm it, if you like, we can hear from Tyson Fury and his promoter, certainly in the UK, Frank Warren.
First of all, let's talk about Usyk, because now I can. Before, everyone once asked me a million questions about Usyk when I've got Chisora to beat. And as we see tonight, Chisora's no easy pushover for anybody. So, yeah, I'm ready. I'm willing to take on Usyk next. whether it's going to be in Saudi Arabia or back here in the UK. It's both places will be fantastic. And let's give the fans one champion, one name, one face. Usyk's up for the challenge. He came over tonight, so fair play to him. He's not an easy boxer to figure out. He's a slick southpaw mover with very good skills, Olympic gold medalist, and he's coming on some good form. So I'm really looking forward to the challenge. But for whatever reason, like I say, a lot of big fights, and Bob's here, he's 125 years old, and he can tell you himself, sometimes the big fights sometimes don't happen for whatever reason. But I've got a good feeling this one's going to happen. But if it doesn't for X, Y, or Z reasons, then we'll have Joe Joyce at Wembley next year as well. But providing the Usyk one does happen, then I'll do him and then I'll have Joe Joyce as well at Wembley. Why not?
The idea that there's an undisputed title fight on the line here has been questioned, obviously, by Eddie Hearn. Can you put that worry to bed?
Well, you know, as usual, he's always, you know, what he says as far as he's concerned, that's how it is, but we know different. If you look at the rotation system, when Joshua, which they agreed at the time as well, there was a rotation system for the mandatories, and at the moment, the rotation system, as it stands, the next one in is the WBA. The WBA have written to the IBF, as I understand, the WBC and the WBO. So why would anyone want to stand in the way of that fight?
And does Joe Joyce stand a chance of coming first before Usyk?
Only if there's a problem, but I think that, you know, we all want to see the Usyk fight, and I want to see the Usyk fight because I really want to see Tyson prove what he has proved it, but, you know, I just like him to win BD, have the 4 belts. It's a great thing to have on his resume, and I'd like to then see Joe in with him because I think it's a great fight, clash of style.
Well, they seem to believe it's happening next, so that's good for George's birthday, if nothing else.
Thank you for thinking
We
of
just
me.
found out in the little break there as well that Paul Butler has sadly come up short against Noya Inoue. One of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world, to be fair, and, you know, deserves all the credit in the world for giving him a fight. But now we have another undisputed champion, so congratulations to him. But yeah, we heard earlier Josh Green's top 3, kind of my top 3 as well, UK fighters of the year. We put out a poll.
We did.
And Georgia, I think, has got the results and some comments from our listeners, viewers.
So on the poll, we put Tyson Fury, Tasha Jonas, and Sonny Edwards, and other comment who. 3% clicked other and then didn't say
Didn't comment who.
So 32% went for Tyson Fury, 44% went for Tasha Jonas, 20% Sonny Edwards.
Wow, go on, Tash.
Majority of comments, Tasha.
Yeah.
She's been brilliant this year. I think Sonny deserves a lot more credit than he gets, which I also agree with. I hope he gets bigger names next year. Has to be Tasha Jonas for me. For her to move up way more than her natural weight and win 3 belts is nothing short of incredible. Tasha, she's the only one in January. You wouldn't imagine that she'd had the year she'd had. Don't think it's a case of overachieving, but that she has had 12 months even she couldn't have possibly thought, I'm sure. You're like,
Nice social media grammar there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
I was going to ask who said it, but don't say it. Just embarrass them.
Jonas moved up a weight division with a real lack of support, I also agree, and has cleared the floor with them. She does have to fight Harper, though. And then again, another Tash Jonas. Going to Instagram. Oh, gosh. Oh, Leon Edwards. We're talking about boxing, not MMA. Tommy Hodgson be winning titles in 2023. Adam Azim, Maisie Rose Courtney, and Maxie Hughes.
They're the other comments?
Yeah.
Maisie Rose Courtney.
She's just made her debut. Yeah.
Brilliant.
One to look out for, I'm sure. But
That's from Mrs. Courtney.
That was from me.
All right, good stuff. We also put it out to socials to get some questions for you,
Okay.
Mr. Will Harvey. So
Who's your
prepare
fighter of the
yourself.
year, first
Oh,
of
yeah,
all?
good question.
Yeah.
I have to agree. I think Tasha, like I said to you off camera, Tyson's obviously had a great year, I think, but actually just what Tash has managed to achieve, like, because I know that she had a lot of problems before in the last kind of year. She's gone away, she's had a baby, and then to come back and then achieve her dream of winning a world title first and foremost, and then being able to become unified world champion, I just think it's a really inspirational story. So, like, you know, Sonny Edwards has looked fantastic in his fights, but I don't think he's managed to achieve and get the fights that he really wanted to. Tyson, you know, has done what Tyson's done, no question about it. Like, he's always going to be there or thereabouts. But I just think you know, like I said, the kind of year or so that Tash has had, the fact she's gone away, had a kid, and then come back and become a unified world champion, I just think is an amazing story. So for me, it's her year, hands down.
A controversial question. We take it back to fight camp with Terry Harper and Tash Jonas.
Yeah.
Who did you have winning?
If you can think back I can try and think back to that one. I remember it being a really, really close fight. And do you know what? I can't remember who I had winning, but I remember thinking, I'm pretty sure that I don't feel like anybody was robbed. I think it was one of those fights that it could have gone either way. It's very subjective scoring, and you know, you might see it, you might like to see different things than other people. So I can't remember who I had winning, but I don't think there was any kind of robbery or foul play there. And I just think that the rematch will be spectacular as a result. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
All right, so audience questions for Will. Andy White, who's kind of our pseudo boss, always contributes.
Nice.
But the first one we've already covered because it's about Okolie. But I think the other two are actually really interesting questions. So has Anthony Joshua's commercial activity undermined his fighting focus and restricted his ability to make fights? For example, Fury recently.
No, it hasn't restricted his ability to make fights at all.
There was that kind of rumour, someone categorically stated there was an issue with his commercial obligations, and that was an issue.
Yes.
I think it was Eddie Hearn.
Yeah, but you know, I don't think that was a deal. It wasn't a deal breaker from our side anyway. Like, we just needed more time to kind of thrash it out. Like, we were up against the time frame where we were constantly being given 3 or 4 days before Fury was just walking away and doing something else. So we just needed more time, and I don't think that was going to be a deal breaker. Like, we can definitely get over that hurdle. Has his sponsorship? No, what was the question again? Sorry.
Has the commercial relationships affected his focus on fighting?
Right.
Basically?
Yeah. No, I don't think it has, because you know he's got a lot of commercial partners for that is for sure. But we've always managed it in a way where he's only ever doing the kind of the activations and stuff outside of his training camps. As soon as he goes into training camps, there's a 12-week block in which we lock off, and there is nothing that will do commercially, until sometimes where on the fight weeks, which are always hugely demanding. But if you're a superstar, they are going to be demanding media-wise, which you can't really avoid. But on the sponsorship side of things, no, I don't think so. Having said that, I don't like going forward. Again, this is just my opinion. I don't think that he needs those sponsors as much as he did maybe back in the day when he was coming up.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of revenue, he's, you know, they create a lot of revenue for him for sure, but it's not the kind of same revenue that he gets through fighting.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're doing sponsorship stuff and it's outside of training camp, but sometimes when you're outside of training camp, I do still think you should be recovering. This is again what he's been doing a lot of recently. Just taking some time off and just resting and letting your body and mind recover. And maybe sometimes, you know, when he's got those commercial stuff outside of training camp, that's kind of taking up his capacity to rest before he goes into a hard training block. So going forward, you know, I don't think he needs them as much as he once did, but I don't think you can say that they've been a massive distraction and affected his performance. No, but I would like to probably see him do less now.
And the second one from Andy White, he says, what happens to 258 post AJ? So when Joshua retires?
Well, that's something that we've been working out and working towards for the last couple of years, because when we started, most definitely AJ was and still is our biggest client, and definitely we were able to build ourselves more or less off the back of him and his reputation. But for us, I think to cement the long term, you know, future of our company post AJ is you have to create a body of work which exists on its own outside of him, which I think we've started to do with the fighters that we've signed and we continue to sign, and where we get them in terms of helping them become world champions, doing the right commercial partnerships for them outside of the ring and stuff. And you know, like we've done it, we did it with Lawrence. we've done it with Josh Boatsi. Ben Whittaker will continue to will be the next one to do it, and really I think Ben's got huge potential outside of the ring as well. Fraser as well, we're doing it with. So I think it's just signing and creating a body of fighters and work you do with the fighters that just exist outside of AJ, so that, you know, when people want to come and join us and we're trying to sell ourselves to these fighters, you know, we can actually reference a lot of work we've done that's nothing to do with AJ, where it's not just, before it's just like, look what we've done with AJ, but now we can say we got Okolie to where he was, did the same with Watsy, Fraser, Ben, etc., Shannon. So yeah, I think that's it. And then also, which is not necessarily my area as such, but we are going to try and go into other sports as well. I think, you know, once AJ retires, his you know, passion and hobby is actually business. He's very entrepreneurial. He's got a number of different companies in a number of different areas. And he really has always spoken about when he retires, he can't wait to kind of get more involved in the business side of things. So actually, when he hangs up the gloves, we'll gain a huge asset in him, and then being able to bring him to meetings with us and have him working more day to day on the company. And like I said, we want to go into different sports. We've gone into cycling this year, which has gone very well. We're looking at football. Again, this is people that are not, this is not my day to day, but as a team, we are trying to bring in people that can work in other sports. So, you know, I think that also can kind of hopefully cement the long-term future of the company.
Good stuff. Kid Connor on Instagram says, what's your best tip for a young manager in the boxing industry?
For a young manager, I would say two things probably. For a young manager, I think be willing to, I think you got to be extremely hungry at the start and be willing to get in and actually work somewhere. I have to phrase this in the right way again, but be willing to work for free. Do you know what I mean? Just look for opportunity, take any opportunity that you can get. It's all about experience. You know, I don't think you need to necessarily go in and be like, oh, I need to be managing XYZ fighters, or I need to be at XYZ company. Like I said, with Freddie, obviously he had a great relationship with Anthony, but I was willing to come in and literally do anything. When I first started, I was doing the photocopying, you know, and I was just spending time around him in the operation to try and learn. So any opportunity and route that you can get, no matter how small or insignificant it seems, take it with both hands, because if you've got the right attitude and you're passionate about the sport, it can grow into a much better opportunity, which I'm very happy with how my career has gone so far. And it kind of started from nothing. And then actually, secondly, which probably ironically is not necessarily for a young manager, but as you get further and further into the sport, you get bigger and bigger, you've got to have unbelievably thick skin, because you like boxing is such a it's a great sport to work in, but it's also a horrible sport to work in. Like, it's very, I don't know if cliquey is the right word, but particularly when you get a bit more notoriety as a company, the level of scrutiny that goes on behind your back, and the level of, you know, people that just try and get into people's ears that are around you and persuade them why you're not effective at your job, or you don't know what you're doing, etc., that goes up. And that can be a really frustrating thing when you think you have a great relationship with this fighter or this brand or whatever, and you work your hardest solely for their best interests, but sometimes you feel like, you know, people can try and twist them against you, and it's a very it can be such a frustrating thing to deal with. So you've got to have thick skin and be emotionally strong, and also just don't take it home with you. Life is too short to get completely stressed out and worked up about stuff that goes on in your career. There is more to life than boxing. And Eddie Hearn has always said this, like, you don't want to turn into one of these old bitter guys. Like, it just seems like a load of stress, anxiety. You're just grumpy the whole time. Like, it's a nasty headspace.
Could be me 4th of January.
No,
when
but
I get
you know what I mean?
off.
Yeah, like it's a nasty headspace, but I never want to be someone that's, because that stuff can start to seep into your personal life then as well, if you're constantly in that kind of headspace. So you got to have thick skin. Don't take anything to heart. And like I said, it's ups and downs. So you've got to learn to just ride it. But yeah, also just try not to take it home with you, because otherwise it can like, sometimes it can really get on top of you. And if you're not careful, then it's, you know, you can spiral for sure.
And one from Adam Newman, you might not want to answer all of this question, but he says, what percentage of a fighter's purse do you take? Is it a set figure from the start, or does it change the higher the level the fighter goes?
So it actually would change the higher the level fighter goes. It is set. So what I will say to you is when we do a deal with a fighter, when you're the British Boxing Board of Control manager, you're entitled to take 25% of the fighter's purse. Now, we would never take 25% of the fighter's purse because that, I think, is a ludicrous amount. When we're just starting off in their career, it starts at 10% of the fighter's purse, which is, we still believe, way below market rate. A lot, like, we do research, a lot of our competitors do take 15, and then some take 20, some even take 25. So we feel like we are the cheapest in that regard. But it's 10%, and then as they go up through their career and their earnings increase, then to justify that 10%, it is harder, because if they're earning, if you're doing a deal for them, negotiating a deal, and they're going to earn 1.5 million quid, if you're asking me, I just don't feel comfortable taking £150,000 off of a fighter for a fight. So once they get up and start getting to a certain level of earnings, we then have a conversation and we bring the percentages down. So it always kind of
The
floats
most
around
you ever
the same
takes
place.
10%.
Yes, yeah.
God, that's
Yeah.
amazing. I'd
Yeah.
sign with you.
Thank you.
If I had any ability, and was younger,
Yeah.
and marketable, we could go on.
Yeah.
You get the point.
Yeah.
Did you get any, Georgia, for
I
Will?
didn't know.
No?
No, because I
I'm
didn't
fine with it.
put it out.
Oh, no.
They've probably just been
I put the
Justin
other ones
Timberlake
out.
questions.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
probably.
It's lucky my followers responded, isn't it?
Well, whenever I put questions for people out, nobody ever responds anyway. So, I do one
just
side,
don't
you do
bother
the
anymore,
other.
yeah.
It's how this partnership works.
All right. At least someone's told me. No. All good. All good. So, yeah, you've heard the questions from you guys and also from us. But soon, Will be taking a very different line of questioning in the very scary and very hot seat.
You know shit about boxing.
So this game is called The Worst People in the World.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I think so. I'm not sure what to expect now.
Okay. Take it back to a year and a bit ago when you were training in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
People who drop their gum shields and put it back in their mouth without washing it or rinsing it, or people who never wash their wraps.
Oh, never wash their wraps. Because the gum shield, that's your own problem, but the wraps stink. So if you're not washing them, that's just antisocial.
Antisocial. People who don't put their weights away in the gym, or people who are on the phone the whole session.
Weights away in the gym, because it just gets confusing. Like they line, like with the dumbbells, they line them all up in nice, chronological order, and then these people come and don't put them back, and it all gets messed up. It's just a nightmare.
You're like me. I
Yeah.
hate that.
Yeah.
People who miss the spit bucket in the gym, or people who kiss their dog on the mouth.
Oh, missed the spit bucket, because it's usually going over my hands then, and that's a nightmare.
People who cheat workouts and don't give 100%, or people who take the mick in sparring.
Take the mick in sparring. You're not there to muck around.
People who eat with their mouths open, or people who cough and sneeze on you on public transport.
Cough and sneeze on public transport, especially after the last couple of years we've had. You should know better.
People who don't use deodorant in training, or people who phlegm in the sink.
Phlegm in the sink, that is disgusting.
If you could change one thing about boxing, what would it be?
Less politics.
Yeah. And last question, do you still speak to Brittany?
Brittany. Who's Brittany? Am I supposed to know Brittany? Oh my God. Yeah, we're on very good terms, actually.
Good.
We're on very good
I'm
terms.
very, very glad. Thank you.
That's good.
I looked at Danny, I was like, it's Britney Spears, right? It's Britney Spears.
You know shit about boxing.
Whoa, that was blazing. Even though it's like -3 outside. Really appreciate you coming, Will. Freddie,
Yeah.
as you're known to some people. That's a little inside joke there. No, really appreciate it. And Georgia, thanks as
I
always.
feel like I want to be involved in the inside joke. I don't get it.
When I first met Will was it in Bournemouth?
Yeah, I think
Before
so.
my life got ruined by Sonny Edwards. I called him Freddie, as in Freddie Cunningham, because I just had a temporary brain fart. And it's just kind of
It's
stuck
kind
ever
of stuck,
since.
yeah.
But you do call him Will now.
Now,
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone else calls him Justin, so I think
well.
I'm still one up on that. But no, really appreciate your watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for supporting us all throughout 2022. Have a wonderful Christmas and New Year. And assuming we can still afford to put on the podcast in 2023, if Georgia's pay demands get settled, we'll see you in the new year.
Yo, Danny Flexen here. Think you know shit about boxing? There's only one way to find out. Listen to the full podcast via one of the links in the description or go to secondsoutboxing.podbean.com.
Do you know shit about boxing?